I'm Aaron, 34, and I've always been the steady presence in my family. The one who branched out early, financed his own education, held down a job, and never showed up at Christmas expecting handouts. I'm not flamboyant or loud. I'm the kind of person who listens more than I speak, the quiet achiever who handles business. This probably made it simple for them to exploit me over the years, as I never raised my voice, never confronted them, never caused a sin until I finally did. It began years ago, subtly, as most betrayals do. I'd arrive home for the holidays, arms laden with presents, yet still be met with cold stares from my mum or sly remarks from my brother, Jake. 2 years my junior and always the favored son. Even after he flunked out of 2 colleges, got arrested in a bar brawl, and bounced between jobs like a pinball, my parents still idolized him. Meanwhile, I was too serious, too distant, too sensitive. It didn't matter what I did: birthday, checks for my nieces, helping my parents settle their mortgage after Dad's heart surgery, even co-signing a car loan for Jake when he pleaded on the phone. It was never enough. Things worsened after Dad passed peacefully from a stroke in his sleep. That Christmas marked the first time I truly felt how altered everything was. My mom had grown colder, sharper, almost fragile, and Jake, he seemed bolder, louder, more arrogant, as if being the sole son residing nearby granted him authority. I remember walking in with a stack of gifts, only to be greeted with, "Did you finally get a haircut? Or did someone finally stop pitying you and ask you out?" I brushed it off, as I always did, but something inside me fractured. That was 3 years ago. I should have spoken up then, drawn a boundary, but I didn't. I rationalized it. It's family. They're grieving. They're stressed. They don't mean it. So I remained silent, stayed generous, stayed loyal, and each year the emotional wounds deepened. Last year, the situation really began to spiral. I received a call from my mom in May. She sounded cheerful, almost rehearsed. She explained Jake had an incredible business opportunity, a new real estate venture, a friend pitched, and he just needed a boost to get started. The boost she referred to was a $60,000 investment. She mentioned they were offering the house as partial collateral, and having my name on the deed, from when I'd helped pay off the mortgage, would be beneficial. I was hesitant, but foolish. She insisted it was temporary, just paperwork. I didn't want to be the villain, the ungrateful son who refused after all she'd done raising me. So I agreed, with one stipulation. If anything changed, I retained the right to remove my name. She agreed. Jake mumbled a quick thanks over speakerphone. Already halfway to Vegas, I suspect. By September, I discovered the business was a thinly veiled house-flipping scam, poorly managed, filled with half-finished properties and creditors. I confronted Jake, and he had the audacity to say, "It's your fault for not helping sooner. You could have gotten in on the ground floor." That was the precise moment I decided I was finished. I didn't inform anyone, but I quietly began consulting a lawyer. We meticulously reviewed the original agreement, the joint deed, everything. It turned out that because I had financed over 70% of the home's value, and due to my mum and Jake defaulting on a second mortgage, I held significant legal power, especially when the bank flagged my name during a refinance attempt Jake initiated behind my back. He'd tried to sell equity in the house that wasn't even his. My lawyer stated, "You have every right to safeguard your investment, particularly since you were misled." So, for the first time in my life, I chose not just to protect it, but to reclaim it. By mid-December, I had everything in place. The house, once under all 3 of our names, had been legally transferred solely into mine. Thanks to a clause my lawyer discovered buried in the original refinancing documents, I possessed full authority to terminate their usage rights and remove them as legal occupants if I wished. This alone unsettled me, but then, something occurred that eliminated all hesitation. Christmas brunch. I wasn't going to attend. I told myself it wasn't worth the emotional toll, the forced smiles, the cutting remarks disguised as jokes. But my Aunt Karen, the only one who ever truly valued me, asked me to come. She said, "It's just brunch, Aaron. Maybe it'll be different." This year it wasn't. I arrived with a bottle of wine and a store-bought pie. I didn't expect a warm reception, but even I was taken aback by the chilling atmosphere. My mum barely looked up from her seat. Jake smirked when he saw me, quipping, "Look, who remembered where we live." My niece gave me a hug, bless her, but everyone else acted as though I were an intruder. They'd already begun eating. No one had saved me a spot. I settled at the end of the table. Beside the piano, no one played anymore. We endured scrambled eggs and strained conversation. Then Jake stood, raising a champagne glass. He cleared his throat and tapped it with a fork, as if proposing a toast. Here's to family, he declared, and to cutting out dead weight, starting with you. He raised his glass. The room erupted in laughter. My mum chuckled. Even my cousin clapped. My hand tightened around my fork. I scanned the room, waiting for someone to declare it a joke, that it had gone too far, but no one did, so I smiled. It was a strained, overly calm smile. I reached into my bag, not a briefcase. Nothing dramatic, just a regular canvas tote I used for gifts. I pulled out a crisp folder and slid it across the table. Jake tilted his head. My mum blinked. Perfect timing, I said. They gazed at it as if it were a menu. Then Jake opened it, and the color drained from his face. Inside was the notarized deed to the house. Their names, once listed beneath mine, had been formally removed. It was signed, sealed, and legally binding. 10 seconds passed before anyone uttered a word. What is this? Jake snapped, his voice rising. My mum looked as if she'd seen a ghost. She reached out with trembling hands, scanning the pages. You can't do this, she stammered. I already did, I stated, as composed as ever. Aunt Karen leaned in, whispering, What did you just do? Jake violently shoved his chair back. It hit the wall. You think you can just cut us out like that, after everything we've done for you? I rose slowly, pushing my chair in. No, I'm not cutting you out. I'm just finally returning the favor. And just as Jake's face reddened, just as my mum opened her mouth to plead, curse, or cry, that's when the doorbell chimed. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, watching them all freeze as the sound echoed through the room. The tension was so palpable you could have sliced it with the steak knives still clinking against half-finished plates of ham and sweet potatoes. Jake's eyes darted between the folder and the door, as if he were trying to decide whether to scream or bolt. My mum stared at me, mouth agape, her expression vacant, the kind of face someone makes when they realize their safety net has just ignited. My aunt slowly got to her feet, hesitant. I'll get it, I said with a slight smile, turning toward the door. As if it were any other Sunday morning, I opened it. 2 uniformed men stood there. Not police, though Jake's face certainly paled as if they were. No, these were private security, hired through the firm I'd been working with for months. I'd consulted my lawyer on how to execute this the right way, not out of malice, but out of precise legal, moral, and financial cleanliness. Mr. Donnelly, the taller one, inquired. That's me, I nodded. Come on in. They stepped inside, removing their hats politely, like true professionals. My mum gasped, and Jake looked ready to lunge across the table. What is this? He barked. You need bodyguards now. No, I said, my voice steady. They're here to serve the official documents. Your access to the property is revoked, effective immediately. You'll have 72 hours to vacate. Silence. Total, deafening silence. Even the clatter of utensils had ceased. My niece just sat there, a fork full of eggs suspended halfway to her mouth. Jake finally lost it. You can't just kick us out. That's our home. No, Jake, I said, walking back to the table. It was mine. You were living in it, rent-free for almost 3 years. You used my name, my credit, and my goodwill. Then you tried to double-cross me. This isn't eviction. This is justice catching up. My mum's voice cracked. Aaron, please. This is your family. I turned to her slowly. So was I, until you turned me into a bank account with legs. She flinched as if I'd slapped her, but I felt no remorse. Not this time. I sat back down and calmly poured myself a glass of water. The security guards handed over the envelopes, one for Jake, one for my mom. Man quietly waited by the front door. Polite, silent, professional. I paid off the mortgage, I said. I kept the house afloat after Dad passed. I even covered the second loan Jake took out in my name to fund that real estate scam. Do you recall that? The paperwork you all conveniently forgot to mention. My mum shook her head. You don't understand. We were desperate. No, I cut in. You were entitled. You expected me to carry you. And when I hesitated, you mocked me, laughed in my face, told me I was dead weight. Jake pushed himself up from the table. So what now? You just get to play king. You think we'll just leave? You don't have to leave, I said, sipping the water. You just can't stay here. His fists clenched. You smug little don't, my aunt warned, her voice cutting through the room like ice. Don't you dare. You brought this on yourself. That made Jake pause. He blinked at her as if he couldn't comprehend whose side she was supposed to be on. She looked at me, quiet but firm. You're not wrong, Aaron. I just wish it didn't have to come to this. I nodded. So did I. Jake stormed out of the room, muttering under his breath. My mum just sat there, staring at the documents as if they were written in an alien script. I stood up again, smoothing out my shirt. You have 3 days. The locks will be changed after that. I'll have movers available if you need them. It's not personal, but it is final. I turned to leave. Just before I reached the door, I paused and glanced back. Oh, and Jake, I added, one more thing. He stopped halfway up the stairs, glaring over the railing. I also withdrew from the business loan cosign. You'll be hearing from the bank Monday morning. Might want to answer that one. He turned pale. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked outside into the crisp, cool air, took a deep breath, and smiled. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a side character in my own narrative. I felt liberated. I didn't drive home right away. I sat in the car for a while, engine off, gazing through the windshield at the wreaths still hanging askew on their front door, the same one I'd bought them last year, hand-woven, expensive, the kind my mum once would have raved about. Now it looked out of place, as if clinging to a version of this family that no longer existed. My hands were still trembling, but not from fear, from release, from shedding years I'd spent navigating their moods, their insults, their judgments. It was peculiar. I wasn't sad. I wasn't even angry anymore. I just felt clarity. My phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Karen. You did what you had to do. I'll be by tomorrow to help clear your dad's things before they get rid of them. They won't understand, but I do, and I'm proud of you. That last line resonated more deeply than I'd anticipated. I stared at it for a long time. I'm proud of you. I couldn't recall the last time someone in my family had said that to me. My mum never did. Not even when I graduated college early. Not when I paid off my loans. Not when I sent her money every month without question. Jake received that affirmation constantly, after his first job, after every failed venture, even after getting arrested. But me, I got silence until now. I replied with a brief, thank you, tomorrow works. I sat there for another 10 minutes, watching snowflakes begin to drift down over the hood. It was quiet outside, the kind of quiet that feels sacred. I almost didn't want to disturb it by starting the engine, but then I remembered the storage unit. A few weeks before Christmas, I'd begun carefully, respectfully boxing up some of the more significant items from the house. I waited until Jake and my mum were both out, then discreetly brought in movers. Dad's records, his old medals, the photos from when we used to go hiking, all now safely locked away. I wasn't going to leave those behind for Jake to pawn off in another emergency. I turned the key, and the car roared to life. I didn't look back as I pulled out of the driveway. The next day, I met Aunt Karen at the house. Jake wasn't there. His car was gone, probably out trying to convince someone to loan him money to reverse what couldn't be reversed. My mum answered the door with swollen eyes and a vacant stare. She said nothing, merely stepped aside and let us pass. The furniture remained untouched. The garland still draped the banister, but the air felt different, heavy with resentment, stale with disbelief. I'll just be collecting Dad's things, I said gently. You can keep everything else. Her lips trembled, but she remained silent, nodding once. Slowly, we worked in silence. Karen helped me lift the old wooden chest from beneath the stairs, the one holding Dad's journals. We took down the framed family photo that once hung above the fireplace, the only one where all 4 of us smiled back. Before the money, before the bitterness, before they started treating me like an outsider. As I first held the frame, I noticed something I hadn't before, a tiny crack in the glass, running directly through my face. Fitting by mid-afternoon, we'd loaded the last of it into my car. Karen hugged me tightly. You're going to feel guilt, she said, because that's what good people do. But don't mistake guilt for regret. I nodded. I know, I just wish that they were different. She completed my thought for me. Yeah, me too. We stood there for a while. Then I got into my car, waved goodbye, and drove straight to the storage unit. It was a small, clean, climate-controlled space, just large enough to hold the parts of my father worth cherishing. I stacked the boxes neatly, draped a cover over the old armchair he used to sit in while reading the paper, and placed the framed photo, crack and all, on the top shelf. Before I left, I locked the door and stood there for a moment, key in hand. There was a sense of finality to it that I hadn't anticipated. I wasn't just safeguarding memories anymore. I was closing a door that should have been shut years ago. That night, around 8 p.m., my phone started buzzing. Jake voicemail after voicemail. He was screaming. The first few were angry, threatening, lawyers, accusing me of ruining Christmas, insisting you don't do this to your own blood. Then came the panic. He'd visited the bank and they'd frozen the refinance. His credit was plummeting, he claimed. I had no right to ruin his life like this. And in the last message, he cried, I don't know what to do, man. They're going to take my truck. Mom's crying. I can't believe you did this to me. I didn't respond. I didn't delete the voicemails either. I saved them, like trophies. Not out of cruelty, but as reminders of where I came from, of what I escaped. The fallout wasn't complete yet. The true explosion occurred 2 days later when the sheriff's notice arrived at their door, and the family group chat began buzzing like a disturbed wasp nest. The notice was delivered in person, certified, signed for, final. I wasn't even there when it happened, but I heard about it within the hour, courtesy of a family group chat I hadn't looked at in months. The group, originally created for organizing birthday parties and holiday plans, had detonated with the subtlety of a gas leak near a match. The first message came from my cousin Claire. Aaron, what is going on? Then my mum chimed in. You humiliated this family. Hope you're proud of yourself. Jake followed with, this is low, even for you. You want to talk about dead weight? Look in the mirror. I didn't respond. I just turned off notifications and kept sipping my coffee. But the drama didn't end there. Later that afternoon, I received a call from the lawyer I'd hired to oversee the transfer. She said my mother had called her office twice already, once crying, once yelling, and had accused her of manipulating her poor baby boy into homelessness. Apparently, my mom had already visited City Hall to file a complaint. She wanted to challenge the legality of the deed change and reverse the eviction. But what she didn't grasp was that every single move I'd made had been documented, notarized, and legally watertight. There were video records of her signing the transfer papers. There were voicemails and texts proving Jake's unauthorized attempt to refinance using my name. There were receipts for every dime I had paid on that house, from the down payment to the repairs I funded during the roof collapse 5 years back. My lawyer told her flatly that if she continued threatening legal action, she would be countersued for fraud. That's when things escalated personally. A week later, I learned she'd started telling extended family members that I'd forged her signature and stolen the house. She claimed I was trying to dismantle what remained of our family. I ignored it at first. Most of them barely knew me anyway. But then one of my mom's cousins reached out to say, just so you know, she's trying to turn the whole family against you. She even stated, you manipulated your dad into giving you control of the house. That crossed a line. Dad was sacred, the only one who ever truly understood me or tried to. I knew the real reason my mom was panicking wasn't because she'd lost a place to live, it was because she'd lost control. For years, she held me emotionally captive with guilt. She used phrases like, after all I've done for you, and you're lucky I didn't leave you behind. She never resorted to physical abuse or screaming, but she had perfected the art of diminishing me with subtle, passive-aggressive cruelty. So I made one final move. I drafted a letter to every extended family member who'd been drawn into her drama. Not a rant, not even revengist facts. I laid out the timeline, attached copies of the deed transfer, screenshots of bank payments I'd made over the years, the refinancing documents Jake tried to sneak through. I didn't even editorialize it. I let the truth speak for itself. At the end of the letter I wrote, I'm not asking for sympathy, I'm asking for silence. Please respect my choice to step away from a dynamic that has drained me for most of my life. If you feel compelled to take sides, then you've already missed the point. A few relatives replied with quiet support. Most remained silent, which was perfectly fine. I wasn't striving to win popularity contests anymore. As for Jake, he crashed at a friend's house for a bit. I heard through the grapevine that he tried staying with a woman he dated on and off, someone unaware of his spending habits. She kicked him out within a week after he stole cash from her purse to buy scratch-off tickets. Eventually he ended up in a rental, not a great one, shared with 2 roommates, neither of whom seemed thrilled to be living with someone who couldn't hold a job for more than 6 weeks. His truck was repossessed in February. I only found out because he posted a rant on Facebook, tagging the bank and falsely accusing them of ruining a veteran's life, which was quite rich. Considering he never served a single day, my mom eventually moved in with my Aunt Lorna in Indiana, the woman who once declared, I'd rather die than live outside of my home. Now shared a guest bedroom in a house with floral wallpaper and a single bathroom. She sent me a lengthy email after she moved, not to apologize, of course, but to explain, to tell her version. She wrote about how difficult it was after Dad died, how terrified she was, how lonely, how Jake was the only one still nearby, and how she clung to him out of fear. She said, maybe I pushed you away without realizing it, and that she missed the sweet boy who used to bring me tea when I was sick. I stared at the screen for a long time, read the message twice, and then I deleted it. No reply, because the truth is, I was that boy, and she didn't lose me. She gave me away, inch by inch. With every moment she chose Jake's comfort over my respect. With every time she called me selfish for setting boundaries. With every silent look when I was insulted at the table. Every forgotten birthday. Every why can't you be more like your brother. Some losses aren't sudden, they're slow burns. That spring, I sold the house. I considered keeping it, renting it, maybe even living in it. But once the rooms were empty and the oppressive energy had dissipated, I realized something. It never felt like home. It was a place I maintained out of obligation, a monument to people who treated me like a stranger. The sale proceeded smoothly. I secured a good price. As the market was still strong, I deposited most of the proceeds into a trust, then used some to purchase a small cabin outside the city, quiet, wooded, peaceful, the kind of place my dad would have loved. I kept his journals, his medals. I mounted the photo of us, the one with the cracked glass, above the fireplace in the cabin. It's the only photo I've hung in the entire house. Sometimes I walk through the woods behind the cabin and reflect on how far I've come. I used to believe forgiveness meant allowing people to hurt you repeatedly until they decided to stop. Now I understand that forgiveness means safeguarding your inner peace, even if it requires walking away. And I did walk away from the guilt, from the manipulation, from the family who only perceived me as a walking ATM. Now, I spend my holidays however I wish. Last Christmas, I cooked a quiet dinner for just me and Aunt Karen, who flew out to visit. We drank wine by the fire. She gifted me a book of my dad's old recipes that she'd copied by hand. I gave her the deed to the car she'd been borrowing. Since her engine failed last year, she cried. I didn't, but I nearly did. And this year, when Jake called me from a new number and left a lengthy voicemail that began with, "Man, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I was wondering if you could help me out just one more time," I didn't even finish listening. Just smiled, deleted it, and went back to sipping my coffee. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't what you take from people.